Good evening. My name is Sabina Cebedos, and on behalf of the Slovak-American Cultural Center, I would like to welcome you to the SACC webinar series. Tonight, we look forward to our webinar on creative solutions for saving our oceans. This webinar is an opportunity for us to delve into one of the world's biggest challenges, ocean pollution. Slovak architect Lenka Petráková will speak to her innovative design concept, the eighth continent, which brilliantly provides a solution to this challenge and which has been internationally recognized and acclaimed. She will present her prototype ocean cleaning facility that removes plastics from our oceans. After Lenka's presentation, joining the discussion will be Bonnie Monteleone, founder of Plastic Ocean Project, a nonprofit whose mission is to educate the public through field research and implement outreach activities addressing the global plastics pollution problem. And Nick Adamo, technology executive and founder of Making a Mark, charitable foundation dedicated to empowering change through awareness, knowledge, and inclusive opportunities targeting the environment and education. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing our exceptional panel of experts who will share from their perspective their vision and concrete actions we can take to reduce plastics in our ecosystem. These dedicated individuals are truly passionate about our environment. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you the incredibly talented Lenka Petráková. Lenka is from Senec, Slovakia, and began her architectural studies at the Slovak University of Technology, where she received her bachelor's degree in civil engineering, as well as architecture and urban planning. Lenka obtained her Master's of Architecture from Hani Rashid Studio at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. She holds a degree in architectural engineering, specifically in architecture and urban design from the Slovak University of Technology in Bratislava. As part of her graduate studies, Lenka took part in exchange programs at the Vienna University of Technology and at the Southern California Institute in Los Angeles, where she developed her interest in robotics and rapid prototyping in architecture. Lenka's personal and academic work has been exhibited internationally in Venice, Vienna, Jilin, Bratislava, and Beijing. She has received numerous awards, including the Jilin Design Week Award for Innovation in 2017, and most recently, the prestigious 2020 Grand Prix Award for Architecture and Innovation of the Sea from Foundation Jacques Rougerie Génération Espace Mer, Institut de France. Lenka is a globetrotter and has worked internationally in New York, Los Angeles, London, Vienna, Bratislava, putting her expertise to use on environmental projects in China, Europe, and America as well. Since 2017, Lenka is based in London, working with Zaha Hadid Architects, where she's the senior architect responsible for design proposals and investigating design feasibility. I am honored to introduce this extraordinary woman and visionary to our Slovak-American community, who will speak to us today about her award-winning concept, the eighth continent. It is a pleasure to have you join us tonight, Lenka. Srdečne vítaj medzi nami. And over to you for your presentation.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. I want to share with you the dream of a floating station that could restore the balance of the sea, gather ocean debris, create a platform to bring people closer to this environment of distant ocean, which we mistakenly thought was immune to our actions. I want to introduce you to the concept of not a mechanical piece, but a living organism that lives in peace with the environment it inhabits. I want to share the dream of a station drifting on the high seas, which receives tidal and solar energy. It's a station that purifies water and uses it for hydroponic planting or evaporation and condensation to desalinate it to support its community. I want to introduce you to the concept of an educational platform that scientists can visit. However, anyone who is curious and wants to help is welcome, because only knowledge can save us. The oceans today are not just eerie and forbidden regions, but areas that, despite the fact that they may never have seen a human being, feel the effect of human activities worldwide. Our blue ocean is turning into a toxic plastic pollution soup, and due to the currents collecting debris in particular areas, the debris is forming almost new continents. The one growing in the Pacific Ocean is nicknamed the eighth continent. We lived in the delusion that we cannot hurt the ocean by our action on shore for too long. We left hundreds of species to get extinct. But today is time to imagine a cleaner, environmentally more sustainable future and ways to achieve it by architectural and technological creations for better tomorrows. One such invention is the proposed floating station, which is cleaning the ocean and restoring the balance in the marine environment. It collects plastic debris from the surface and breaks it down into recyclable material. The station physically improves the water and creates an interdisciplinary platform to showcase the troubling side of the marine environment. As one of the most critical aspects for any architect is to design space considering its relation with the environment and its surroundings, the ocean intervention cannot be reached by refining the static object alone, but must address complex interactions. The eighth continent is therefore not just dealing with environmental issues considering cleaning the ocean. The station reflects processes that occur on water and learn from marine organisms' biological functions. The challenge is finding out how a system can maintain its stability while still allowing change and adaptation to occur. This dynamic architecture needs to be first influenced, transformed, or organized by ecology systems, allowing architecture to recreate ecology. Natural forces are affecting not only the inside processes, but station's movement and positioning. The station is designed to work in groups that can adapt to the ocean current's direction and optimize the garbage collection. There are programmatically various stations within the groups. There is only one that supports the community and has the research center within each group. The others are primarily collecting and handling the trash. The station is developed to be located on the open sea. It should be anchored to the seabed, but this connection should allow the station to move with the current. It is essential to consider the sea's depth for the station's clearance, which is 60 meters below the water level. The position depends on the water current, and the station should be located in the parts where the ocean currents naturally gather the garbage. The station consists of 5 main parts that together create a self-sufficient living organism. The first one is the barrier that serves to collect waste and harvest tidal energy. The second, the collector, where waste is sorted, biodegraded, and stored. The third, the research and education center, to study and showcase the increasingly troubling side of aquatic environments. Then the greenhouses, where plants are grown and water is desalinated. And last but not least, the fifth part, the living quarters with support facilities. Each of the main parts is developed based on the required environmental characteristics and the program they carry. The barrier flows on the water surface and moves waste towards the collector. The collection technology at the center of the building is designed to optimize waste handling. The research and education center is linked to the collector and greenhouses to flow the water processes and study them. Greenhouses are shaped to optimize condensed water collection and resemble large cells to allow wind to navigate the station. The living quarters, public spaces, and support facilities pass through the building center and connect all parts, geometrically matching the ship's keel. The station's elements must cooperate and optimize the power source. The barrier also collects tidal energy, which powers the turbine to collect the waste. Solar panels cover greenhouses and ensure there is enough power for the water reservoirs heating, allowing the evaporation of water and its desalination. After the wastewater extraction, the filtered clean water is pumped into the water tank and either desalinated or used for halophilic plant hydroponic cultivation. The station is designed to host people and support them both energy-wise and nutrition-wise. Currently, the idea is to house around 50 members crew. Of course, there is a need for technicians and engineers to be at the station to take care of the technology and monitor the processes. However, I imagine marine biologists would be able to research the ocean life and observe how is it changing while the ocean is being cleaned. Chemists would help at the station by researching the best way to biodegrade the plastic. They could gather information about water pollution and research on how future materials should be adjusted. Other than that, anyone interested in the ocean research of any kind would be welcome at the station if we talk about politicians, environmentalists, or any other visitors. I started developing this project as my thesis at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. I was not looking at the ocean pollution as the only problem, but I was researching ocean life, how the ocean plants and animals have behave and adjust, and how they are adjusted to the dynamic environment. I found oceans always fascinating. Their enormous energy, the unknown territory is dominated by nature. I researched a lot about the dynamic deformation of forms. I looked at how the water could flow through space and create areas for collection or filtration. The object is developed from these more abstract geometrical studies that were later overlaid by systematic and programmatic requirements and the environmental inputs. I was always curious. It was always crucial for me to create an object that could behave as if it would be completed by nature. It can be self-sufficient, it can react to change in the environment and support the wildlife. The material definition was not part of the competition brief, so I don't have a very detailed specifications, but my idea was that the outer shell would be constructed as a commercial boat. Similar materials are already proven to be resistant and durable in these conditions. The interior would be partially built before the people move onto the station. The technology would be integrated, but parts that are not essential could be made on site from the station's recycled plastic, so the cleaning station is partially built from the pollution it collects. I hope this concept, when developed on the site, would fulfill before mentioned goals. The life-giving ocean is suffering and we need to help restore its balance for our planet's survival. We cannot achieve it only by technology, but we need an interdisciplinary platform to educate people and change the relationship with the marine environment for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lenka. Wow, the design is spectacular, and not only is it beautiful externally, but is fascinating. The utility of the floating station as it addresses the reduction of plastics in our ocean, as well as a capacity for research and education. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At this juncture, I want to introduce to you our next two panelists who will present as a duo. Let me warmly welcome Bonnie Monteleone, founder of Plastic Ocean Project, and Nick Adamo, founder of Making a Mark Foundation. Let me start with Nick Adamo, a highly successful and driven technology executive who held multiple senior leadership roles with Cisco Systems, which is the last role he served as Senior Vice President of the Global Service Provider segment, an organization that aligns global sales, service delivery, and engineering around Cisco's top service provider customers. Currently, Nick is a partner in Triple T Hospitality Group, which is a New Jersey-based company that owns and operates the Tommy's Tavern and Tap and Tio and Taco and Tequila restaurants throughout New Jersey and Staten Island, New York. I'm sure some of you have either visited or heard of these excellent restaurants. In his current executive role, Nick not only focuses on the success of the business, but also on ensuring that the establishments are eco-friendly. In 2019, Tommy's Tavern and Tap received the 5-star award as an eco-friendly establishment. In addition to his current role, Nick sits on the board of directors for several companies. He is chairman of the board of directors of Commvault Systems, a New Jersey-based multinational software company. He sits on the board of directors for GTT Communications, a multinational telecommunications and internet provider company, and Blue Danube Systems, a private company providing innovative mobile wireless access solutions that significantly and cost-effectively increase network capacity. Mr. Adamo holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Engineering from Columbia University in New York City. You may wonder how this technology executive is linked to our topic of discussion for this evening. Well, Nick is the founder and president of Making a Mark Incorporated, located in Monmouth County, New Jersey, which is a charitable foundation dedicated to making a mark and empowering change through awareness, knowledge, and inclusive opportunities, targeting the environment and education. His foundation supports the work and research of the Plastic Ocean Project, which brings me to the next panelist. Bonnie Monteleone, founder and director of science, research, and academic partnerships for Plastic Ocean Project, is a researcher who has collected plastic marine samples globally, including 4 of the 5 main ocean gyres, the Caribbean, and has extended this work to the Pyramid Lake outside of Reno, Nevada. Bonnie completed her first field study exploration in the North Atlantic Gyre in July 2009. That same year, Bonnie accompanied Alagalita Marine Research Foundation's 10-year resampling of the North Pacific Gyre, quantifying the rate of plastic marine debris growth in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. In 2010, she joined the Five Gyres Institute in a first ever South Atlantic transect sampling for marine debris traveling from Brazil to South Africa. In 2012, Bonnie collected samples from the South Pacific as part of the film A Plastic Ocean, which you can see on Netflix. Bonnie collaborates with the Marine Research Foundation, the Five Gyre Institute, and with renowned researchers like those from University of California, Irvine. In 2012, Bonnie and Paul Lorenzo co-founded the nonprofit Plastic Ocean Project, which she'll speak to today. In addition to the research, Bonnie works in environmental studies in the department at UNC Wilmington as an adjunct instructor teaching a plastic marine debris field studies course, and manages a lab working with students on direct independent study research. Bonnie is also an accomplished artist. She turns some of the plastic she collects on her voyages into modern artistic pieces. So Bonnie has received numerous awards, including Conservation Communicator of the Year, the Governor's Award, Cape Fear YMCA Woman of the Year, environmental awards, and has been nominated for the Cape Fear Woman of Achievement Award in 2018. So welcome to both of you, Bonnie and Nick. Your resumes are very impressive, and I can't wait to hear from all of you. I do want to point out that Bonnie and Nick have a Slovak connection. Bonnie will elaborate more on her ancestry. And for those of you who listened in keenly to my introduction of Nick, you'll note that he was a senior executive of Cisco Systems. And recently, the Slovak company Slido, which created the platform we are using today to interface with our audience, was acquired by the Cisco Systems. So as I've proclaimed in previous webinars, I always find a Slovak connection in everyone I meet. So now, without further ado, over to you, Bonnie and Nick, to share with us the research on plastics in our oceans. And I'm really excited to hear more. I think our audience will be astounded to hear and to realize how severe the problem really is and what we can do to make a difference.
Lenka's work is so vital for our oceans. And what Nick and I are going to talk about today is why we need such technology in order to clean up the environment. So Nick, you ready to go?
I sure am, Bonnie.
All right. So Nick, why don't we talk a little bit about how you and I met?
Absolutely. Actually, it was almost 2 years to the day now that our foundation, Making a Mark, which as Sabina described, we really care about the environment and trying to make sure that there is a future for our generations to enjoy. And we were looking up organizations that cared about oceans and plastics, and we ran across the amazing Bonnie Monteleone and the Plastic Oceans Project. And what it did is just opened up a tsunami, if I can use that term here, of awareness for our entire family as we really started to understand the extent of the plastic problem, and that we really didn't fully have an appreciation for until we really spent time with Bonnie.
And that's why these types of meetings tonight are really important, so we can cast a wider net, if you will, to educate people so that more people will climb on board, just like you did, Nick. And how I met Nick, he reached out to us at the time we were working on a plastics to fuel initiative, trying to figure out if that would be a viable solution. And through the process of communicating with Nick and what he does, the restaurants now that he helps run are now ocean-friendly establishments. And those are programs that were created through Plastic Ocean Project to give our restaurants an opportunity to be recognized for their efforts to reduce their use of plastic. So Nick, you do more than just help other nonprofits. You actually live up to the call. So I thank you so much for that. As far as my Slavic connection, I thought this would be a great opportunity to express, just like Sabina says, there's a little bit of Slavic in all of us. Turns out that's true for me too. So my great-grandmother was from, and forgive my pronunciation, Heberson, there we go. And that was in the Czechoslovakia at the time. And she came over here in 1899, and we don't know for sure if she came over when she was 16 with 18 dresses or 18 with 16 dresses, but she was all by herself. She came over to the United States, and she brought the dresses so she could sell in order to get herself started in the States, which was pretty ambitious to say the least. So her hometown, if I had mentioned, and also I thought I'd just share the names. So I never looked into this, and it wasn't until this presentation tonight that I actually got to explore my great-grandmother's name. I've got it up here, and you can see her maiden name. And then my great-grandfather's name was Joseph Prozaka. So very interesting to find out where this is. And now I have a mission. I need to find out where I need to go find my heritage. And so who knows, I might be in this neck of the woods. So Nick.
Yeah, so, Bonnie, we thought it's really important to start the dialogue about plastics by first having people understand how big and pervasive the problem is in our society. And the fact that every piece of plastic that's ever been made is still persisting somewhere on this earth, since plastic does not degrade. And also that 55% of plastic pollution we see is from single-use containers. So maybe, Bonnie, you can start by describing how big the problem is.
Yeah, Nick, I thought I'd start with this chart. So this kind of describes it all, that we've been mass producing plastic on an epic record through the 1950s until today. And Nick, if you could pick a time on this timeline, where do you think we started reduce, reuse, recycle?
I don't know, maybe at 2010 when there's that slight little dip.
Yeah, that's a really good guess, but that's actually when the market crashed, so that did have an impact. But the 3 R's were actually started in the mid-1980s. And can you see any evidence of the R's actually reducing the use of plastic or reusing?
Nope.
No, unfortunately, the recycling isn't much better. So what's going on with this picture behind these words?
Well, actually, the picture is actually from a local grocery store right here that we go to. And what people can see is, the use of plastics have now gotten to this extent where it is every piece of fruit is being put into a plastic container. In COVID, it's actually become a lot worse because people are using foods more and more, takeout foods. What's even making it even more perverse is they're taking plastic foods and putting it putting a styrofoam container underneath the plastic, which, as Bonnie, is the worst plastic to be used anywhere. So this is just what's happening in our grocery stores every day.
Yes, and I think more and more we're starting to recognize that, this fruit that already has its natural packaging is being removed, and now the unfortunately, there's a robust amount of plastic being produced. And in fact, we are the second largest producer of plastics now, second to China. So our country is now mass producing it because we are using natural gas. Most people aren't aware that plastics are made out of fossil fuels, and that out of, not being even close to the largest country in the world, we generate the most amount of plastic waste. And we supersede China as well as India. So these are two countries that are 3 or 4 times larger than us. So we really have to work on curbing our appetite for these plastics. And then the other interesting fact is that we are among the highest now, and this is kind of a new statistic, but we are among the highest in plastic ending up in the marine environment. So even though we have fantastic waste management systems, we're still in the top in that category as well. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we're going to educate people on what we can do about it. Nick, you had asked for a couple of photos of just like how bad is this problem, right? And what you're looking at are 2 images of islands inside these gyre circulation systems. So on the left, you see plastics. That's actually in Hawaii. So Hawaii's in the middle of the North Pacific Ocean, right? So that plastic is washing up on their beaches as well as what consumers are using there. The picture on the right is of Bermuda. So Bermuda is in the middle of the North Atlantic Gyre. So you can see how these plastics are becoming a huge problem once they're in the ocean, and then they end up on beaches that we aspire to go visit. And once this starts, Nick, it's almost impossible to stop. So that's why we have to get busy so this doesn't happen to our beaches. So as Sabina had mentioned, I've traveled around the world looking at this plastic problem, and I'm going to these gyres, or these circulation systems. In the center is where a lot of this plastic is accumulating. I like it to describe it if you were in a round swimming pool and you were to run around, you'd create a whirlpool. And if you were to throw some leaves on top of that whirlpool, those leaves would end up in the middle where there's least resistance. And the same thing is happening in our oceans, only our oceans are like millions of miles across. So to find plastic in some of these most remote places on the planet, as a graduate student, I realized that I wasn't going to be able just to write my thesis and defend it. I was going to have to start a nonprofit. And so the 3 legs of our nonprofit is education through research. So now we're giving all kinds of students, and even across the globe, opportunities to do research projects. We help them design them, we help walk them through it. And then we also do research in our own lab. And then outreach through art. So as Sabina said, this is one of my art pieces here, where I'm taking plastics that I pulled from the ocean and turning it into compelling stories so that people start to understand that this particular picture, for example, was done by another artist from the early 1800s. And he didn't see any of this plastic. So we're actually changing the chemistry of the ocean in less than 200 years when he made this art piece. So the art can tell a really great story without even saying a word. And then the solutions through collaboration are our ocean-friendly establishments, which Nick, we're so proud that you're part of, as well as looking at possible solutions that companies are doing, like plastics to fuel. So when I say that I'm out in the middle of the ocean and I'm collecting plastics, how we're doing that is we're using the surface sampler. It's called a Manta Troll, and it's because it kind of looks like a manta. It's got a big mouth and little short fins, but it's only about 1 meter across by half a meter deep that we're sampling. And then the net that we're pulling behind it is 333 microns. We're saying that you can't even push a straight pin through. That's how small the holes are. And we're only traveling for about 15 minutes to an hour. And really, this is what we're finding. So when you hear islands of trash or, twice the size of Texas, really what we're talking about are microplastics. So there's not like a big mountain of trash out there. And if you want to describe it better, it's actually an inverted island, meaning that plastic is hanging down in the water column, not stacked up on top. Now, why this is a problem, Nick, is because it becomes bioavailable. Everything from plankton, which is the smallest animal on the planet, to the largest, which is blue whales, right? And everything in between. So I kind of call it the apex predator of the sea now, because it's capable of killing everything and anything that lives in it. So that's just the surface, and we haven't even begun to look at what's hanging in the water column. And I thought this was a great example of how plastics not all plastics float, and some don't sink to the bottom, some just hang in the middle, which means that, you know, everything can be impacted by it.
So Bonnie, this isn't just about the sea animals, right? Because birds eat fish, birds come on land. So this moves through the entire ecosystem of all of us, right? Most people see the litter, they understand the mess it creates, but they don't always make that direct connection as to why it's such a big deal for our well-being as a species. And so why should they really care? Can you try to put a color on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we, you know, with the extensive research that's being done, and one of the reasons why Lenka's, you know, creating this wonderful contraption is because of the negative impacts that it's having. And so just basic estimates on research that's been done on animals that have been either dissected or you know, died from being entangled in plastics, we estimate that there's 1 million seabirds every year that we're losing because of plastic pollution. And, you know, they're really important to the ecosystem because they're our scavengers. They're picking up the stuff to help break it down even faster and turn it into soil or nutrients for the ocean. So when they defecate, that's really important. But unfortunately, if they're dying because of plastic, they're not able to do their job. And then we're losing about 300 million marine mammals, right? So when you think about the dolphins that we love to watch, right? The porpoises and the whales, unfortunately, they don't understand what this material is. And so they're either accidentally ingesting it or getting entangled in it. And then the other side of it is, even if they're able to defecate the plastic particles, there's still a lot of chemicals that are on the plastic that leach out. And then they also adsorb anything that's floating in the ocean. So you know how we have our dirty dozen, all the chemical compounds that we realize that were, you know, cancerous, that we no longer produce. Well, just like the plastics, they persist indefinitely. And so those chemicals then adsorb or go into the plastic because they're both lipophilic or attracted to the same material, which is oil and natural gas. So that causes a huge problem from, you know, all of the species. So the plankton, which is at the base of the food web, you know, we can afford to lose some of our apex predators, but when we start losing the base of the food web, that then affects everything, including us. And then if that's not troublesome enough, there was a report done by the American Academy of Pediatrics actually petitioning our government to start regulating the amount of chemicals that are allowed to be put in plastic. And they're saying because children's metabolism run much faster and these chemicals leach out, that they're being affected by these chemicals more than even adults. And some of those unfortunate impacts are cancer, diabetes, obesity, behavioral disorders, and reproductive issues. So we really have a lot to do as a society to start either stopping using so much plastic or start really petitioning our government to start, you know, really forcing the change that needs to happen. So just for an example of research that we have done, I had this student reach out to me who wanted to know what the companies were replacing BPA with, right? So she had to buy some BPA-free bottles, and then you have a control, right? So your control is that you're not going to do anything with it to compare what you find with the actual things that you're testing. Well, we know there's two ways for these chemicals to leach out of plastic, and one is heat and one is UV light. So she put one in a closet, that was her control, one in the sun, and one in a very hot dishwasher. And when she ran the analysis, she was happy to find that there was not any BPA or BPS, but there was a known carcinogen that came out of these plastic, and it was called sand-acrylonitrile. So this is a known cancer agent if you breathe it in, but they say it's okay if you drink it. So I'll just leave that with you.
It's, Bonnie, it's kind of, it makes you think through a lot of this, because we know due to organizations like yourselves, the awareness to plastics and the plastic problem is becoming, more pervasive, and people get it. And there's a lot of great solutions that are coming out. So it starts to make you believe that it's since the 70 years, like you showed your chart, 70 years since plastics have been created and didn't exist before. If we put our mind to it, we can just have the same effect of ridding the bad elements from this from our environment. But maybe you can spend some time talking about what are the things that are coming about, what can be done about it, and also maybe talk about some of the solutions that might not be such a great idea.
Sure, let's do it. So do you want to talk about this one, Nick? About recycling?
I think it's just crazy for me. And when I some of the learnings for us, right, was when we started to understand that even though all of us think we're doing a great job of recycling, we all take our bottles and cans and we do what we should to put them aside and get picked up by a municipality. The fact that 80 to 90% of that is not really recycled and it's actually ending up in either landfill or in the oceans is just, it makes you really want to understand why.
Yes, and this particular slide is really important. In fact, you introduced me to this slide, Nick, and that is the bottles. Like, these have the greatest value. And the fact that we're not even recycling the bottles, that is very troubling. We understand that other stuff just isn't recyclable, but these certainly are. And to have that big a number of them not being recycled, we got a lot of work to do. So you know that our most common way of addressing this issue is reduce, which means just not use it, reuse the things over and over again, and then recycle. And we're learning a lot about that this system is right on target. It's what we should be doing, but it really isn't working. And mostly because the recycling isn't being worked properly. So we like to say that instead of those chasing arrows, this is what we need. We need this circular economy. We need to figure out how do we make these plastics with less chemicals so that we can then recycle them more readily. But then we still have to level the playing field. And Nick, I put this slide in, I put this slide in here for you to talk about, this is really the crux of the economic side of it. Why isn't it working?
Absolutely. And Bonnie, I think it starts with the analogy. Maybe you can start a second with the analogy you always use, because we're spending so much time, and Lenka's project is trying to take and get our arms around all the plastic that exists and how it's showing up in all the wrong places. But you use the analogy about you've got to stop it at its source.
Yeah, I would be happy to share that. So when I was sailing across the North Pacific with Captain Charles Moore, we were trying to figure out ways that, how do we describe the best way to handle this problem? And we came up with this idea that if you have a bathtub that's overflowing, what do you do first? Do you grab the mop and start mopping it up? Or do you shut the valves off first and then mop? And that's really where we have to start. We have got to stop the flow. And so, while Lenka has her device out there cleaning it up, we really have to stop from any more ending out there. So go ahead, Nick.
And that's exactly right. That's why I think this is important for people to take in, because the true barrier to the circular economy, I come from a business background, and most businesses are rational, right? They try to run a profitable business. It's not their fault that it is more economical to put plastics in landfill or ship them overseas than to recycle them, or that it's 2 times more expensive to manufacture a product from reclaimed materials than from virgin materials. So you have to create the right economic motivation that drives the types of behaviors that we're looking for. Otherwise, we're never going to end up changing behaviors, right? And there are solutions for that. The solutions are around governments mandating and regulating that manufacturers need to be responsible for the whole life cycle of their containers, and you build motivation into the system for that. That's happening in parts of the world. It's happening in Quebec. It happens in certain countries in Europe, where they have either added 2 cents, 5 cents to the container, created the economic stimulus, so you can create that whole circular ecosystem that makes it go from collecting the container through to sorting it out properly and getting them in the right sort of buckets, and then over to organizations that can use it to build new containers.
That's right. And that could either be done through taxing virgin plastics, right? So that's going to level that twice as much for the recycled content than the virgin. So you can level that price out so that then it makes it more marketable to purchase the recycled plastics. And another really good point on this, this slide here is that the landfill, like, so in Europe, it's 5 cents a pound to put debris in a landfill, and here it's 2.5, right? So like the savings on that end. And then how are we able to maintain this crazy market with these plastics? And we've learned that the fossil fuel industry is getting $1 trillion in subsidies. And so some of those subsidies are actually going to the virgin plastic. So they're getting a leg up on many different ways. So we just really do need to level that playing field. Some of it's going to be through legislation, and that means us using our voices, saying that it's time now that the industries that are producing these virgin plastics have to take a part in the back end of this problem. And I'm beginning to see that it's going to happen because there's now just more and more information out there for people to get behind. So I'm really excited about that. Well, we often see natural solutions, right? So you hear about biodegradable, compostable plastics or materials, and you know, so we moved away from like cardboard because we're cutting down so many trees, and so we were starting to use plastic, which may not have been a bad solution, but now we've gone too far with that. And we've become so much better at recycling materials that maybe it's a good idea now that we go back to the paper until we figure out this problem, right? So this will reduce our use of plastic. You know, if an animal accidentally eats the cardboard, they're not going to die, nothing bad. They're probably going to be able to digest it, right? Like this is where we need to get back to working with nature, like Lenka was saying, you know, like whatever we're doing to the environment, we got to make sure that it's safe for everything, not just us. And then the biodegradable plastics are okay, but really you should be looking for any labels that say compostable, because those will go back into nature. Some other really interesting concepts have come up. The one of engineering plastics, engineering plastic eating bacteria. That means that nature doesn't make this bacteria, we're creating it in a lab. Nick, how do you feel about that?
I thought it was a great solution when I first heard it, and then you educated me, Bonnie.
Yeah, I did too. I thought, you know, well, this is good because then, you know, it'll be like nature. Nature has, you know, organisms that eat the cardboard. So maybe this will be great. But then I really got thinking about like, well, plastic was never supposed to end up in the ocean, but it did. And these organisms will mutate. There's no doubt about it. And when they do, what happens then? Does it become like plastic rust? Is it going to eat the casings on our wires, or even worse, what would it do to whale blubber? Since it will be lipophilic, it will be eating those lipids that we're trying to create. And so that to me is like, how do we fix that problem if it goes wrong? You know, what's Lenka gonna do with that mess, right? So we really have to think long and hard when we make the next solution. And one we've been looking at is chemical recycling, and there's some pushback on that because we are talking about toxic material. I mean, this plastic is made out of petroleum and natural gas, which is toxic. And the chemicals that are in the plastic are also made out of petroleum and natural gas. So, so what are we gonna do about it? Well, this was one of the ideas that we had because we thought it just needs to be gone, right? And since we're still pumping fuel or oil out of the ground, why not take what we've already taken out of the ground, turn it back into fuel and use it, especially for island nations, you know, Nick, that are having to pay a premium for that oil to be shipped there. There's always a risk factor when you're taking fuel and going across an ocean. And meanwhile, these islands, as I had showed you in those pictures, they have all this plastic washing in, might not even be theirs, most of the time it isn't. And then they have tourism, so they have all that single-use plastic. So imagine cruise ships actually taking this plastic and turning it into fuel. So it really could be a viable solution for now until we move away from petroleum plastics. And I really think that's going to be the future. So thanks to Nick and his family, they helped funded our research because our idea was we don't want to create another environmental problem by trying to fix one. And so these are some of the things that we're looking at to make sure that this plastic to fuel solution doesn't already add to more methane being released in the atmosphere. How harmful are the byproducts? How much energy is it going to take? And then where are the heavy metals? Because believe it or not, some plastics do have heavy metals. We're looking at the sulfur content, does it release dioxins and persistent organic pollutants? So all of these things, Nick, that we've been working on are coming back pretty positive. And in fact, we're going to be publishing that data. And I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised that this may be a really good solution for especially island nations. And of course, that addresses what's here now. And I think, you know, we can't forget, like we can reduce our use of plastic and that's really great, but we also have to figure out what to do with what's here on the planet now. And that's part of our plastics to fuel idea. This is Lenka's idea, you know, how do we take care of what's already here and help mitigate those impacts on the environment? And then us, each and every one of us can help, right? A cleanup is the best ocean cleanup that we've got going for us. And that means everywhere, right? Because rivers lead to rivers that lead to the ocean. So it doesn't matter if you live on a mountain, that cleanup could very well prevent the plastic that might end up in Lenka's machine if, you know, we don't pick it up. So it really comes down to all of us getting behind, you know, picking up, cleaning up the environment and also not using the plastics. So this is where the, you know, the real power is here, right? We vote with our dollars. Every time we take that plastic thing off the shelf, we're saying, put another one there, right? But when we leave it on the shelves, industry starts figuring out like, people aren't buying this, why aren't they buying it? And then we use our voices. We tell the companies that we love their product, but we hate the plastic. Could you come up with other packaging? And through our voice, we can actually change the way things are right now. And in fact, Nick, you only have to change the bottom line of a big company by 4% to get their attention. So we don't need everyone to do it, but it sure would be nice. But little things that we can all do is just, you know, bring your own bag, bring your own containers. And that goes for like to-go-ware, right? Your own fork, spoon, knives. I have bamboo-ware that I bring with me. So I'm not taking that single-use fork, spoon, or knife. And then buy local. That's one of the best things we can do. We're supporting our neighbors by buying local. And I bet in your neighborhood, you have somebody that's making soap and you'll know exactly what ingredients are in it. It will not require a plastic bottle and you're gonna get a much better product. And then also, and this is one thing I always ask people, but because of this, we can't. I ask the question, so how many of you recycle? And people, almost everyone raises their hand, right? And then I say, how many of you, when you go shopping, look for recycled content in the packaging? And it's like, that's one thing, you know, if you want the recycling to work, you really have to make sure that you're buying those things that are using the recycled content. And then I just do want to end on a happy note. And Tanya, you know, thank you for bringing that to my attention, because I do firmly believe this, and I share this with young people all the time, that, you know, it is a great time to be alive, because whenever there's a lot of adversity, that's when people pull together and they really start fixing the problems that we're creating. I mean, that's what World War II was about, us pulling together and trying to, you know, stop something that was not so good. As well as, you know, when we were using aerosols, right? We were killing the ozone in the 70s. And then we made this shift, right? People learned about the problem, they believed in the science, and people shifted, businesses changed the contents of the chemical that was causing that problem. And we actually healed the ozone hole. Like, that happened in our lifetime. And we can do it with this too. But this problem is so big that it's going to take everyone. It's not going to just take scientists. It's going to take the architects and engineers and artists and communicators and writers and good storytellers, you know? And then we're going to need legislators, and we're going to need everyone to use their voice. And we're going to do it. We're going to solve this. We're going to solve it, and I know it, because out of all the environmental issues right now, this is the easiest one to fix, though it won't be easy. And for that, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Bonnie and Nick. we can see from your presentation the enormity of the problem, but as you said, I think that there's so many things that we can do to reduce the plastics and be cognizant of what we're buying, what we're using. I guess we don't realize it, and plastic is everywhere, and it not only affects our oceans, it affects our health. So it is alarming. Take one day and really reflect on, from the morning when you wake up with the toothbrush that you brush your teeth with, just plastic, and take a shower and the shampoo is in a plastic bottle, and so on throughout the day, how much plastic you actually use and what you can do in your own life to reduce it. So in the very beginning of our event, we asked the audience some questions that were related to this webinar, and I'd love to see what they said, and perhaps that could spark some discussion in the question and answer period. So in the meantime, as we go over your answers, please feel free to write your questions in Slido on the right side, and feel free to ask Lenka, Bonnie, and Nick anything that comes to mind, and they're here to answer your questions in the next segment. The first question was, last time you visited the beach, did you see plastic waste? Wow, 73% of you said yes, and 27% of you said no. I'd love to know where you didn't see any waste. So that would be interesting. The next question we asked you is, on average, how many plastic water bottles per year does a US consumer use? 53% of you said 330. 40% of you said 160, and some percent of you said 50. The correct answer is actually 160 on average. And that's huge if you think about how much plastic waste that is, and how easily we can just take 160 bottles away in a year by just using a refillable water bottle or using our nifty cup. So there's so many great things that you can do. Even when you go buy coffee from the local Starbucks or the local store, bring your own cup. It's, you know, that you've cleaned it and you know it's yours, and you don't need to create more plastic waste. Same thing with straws. I love the reusable straws, so that's another option. Another question that we asked you was, which of the following do you do to reduce plastic waste? So we want to hear from you. Bring your own bags to the supermarket. Fantastic. 79% of you said that you do that. That's really, really great. Carry reusable water bottles. So I think I don't need to preach to the choir. It seems 71% of you already do that. So wonderful. Wash and reuse plastic Ziploc bags. 71% of you do that. Wow. That's amazing. And then also, you know, the glass containers that you can use for storage. Then refuse plastic utensils at takeaway places. 50% of you do that. Wow, I love, our audience is definitely aware of the huge problem that we're facing. So wonderful to hear that. And not only refusing utensils, as Bonnie mentioned, you know, bring your own. And then only 7% of you use a bamboo toothbrush. I think that has, so maybe we can inspire you today to go out and buy a bamboo toothbrush, and we can drive that number up. I think we have a couple more questions. So Peter, if you can move on to the next one. Thank you. Now here's a statistic we wanted to see what you think. The largest offshore plastic garbage patch in the world, which floats in the Pacific Ocean, is twice the area of which US state? And an overwhelming you answered correctly, Texas. So excellent, excellent news. No one thinks it's New Jersey. I guess New Jersey is quite small. So you're aware of the dramatic problem that we face. And this, I think, also speaks to a lot of the work that has been done to educate us, and a lot of the campaigns that are running to bring this to our attention. So wonderful. And let's move on to the next question. Looking at the bottom of the plastic items that you might have in your household, you will find a number in the chasing arrows, right? So what numbers does your municipality accept for recycling? So this is something I can't tell you what the correct answer is. You need to check with your own city to see which is recycled, and please make sure that that's how you sort your recyclables. I don't know, Bonnie, do you want to comment a little bit more on this question?
I do. So for all the numbers, there's nowhere in this country that accepts all of them. Like, that is just not happening. And in fact, I just reached out to our municipality just to confirm that we are no longer taking number 5. So we used to take 1s, 2s, and 5s. Those are predominantly the ones that are recycled, but different counties, different communities do accept different ones. But we know for a fact that no one is taking all of them. So if you're throwing them all in your recycle bin, they're probably not all getting recycled. That's the bad news. But it is really helpful if you are putting what belongs in your recycle bin in there and not anything outside of that. So when I do my recycling, it's 1s and 2s, and it's basically your soda bottles, water bottles, and your detergent bottles. Those things are the ones that have the greatest value. Right now, China's no longer taking our plastics. That's when we had a really strong market for these plastics. We don't have a strong market, and that's what this presentation is about. We need to bring back that industry. We used to have over 300 businesses that were doing the recycling in the US. We're down to 40. So this is a great opportunity, you know, a great time for change. Let's get those recycling facilities back, and let's get more plastic recycling content into our resources.
Bonnie, is there anything that we can do in order to encourage kind of our local governments to do more in the cities and towns we live in?
Yes, absolutely. You should be involved with your local legislators. They like to hear from you, believe it or not. I know you think that they're too busy, but they actually like to get a pulse on what their constituents are interested or care about. So always reach out, write letters, call them up, and show up whenever they have town meetings or whatever, and really express like what you want to see with your waste management. And one of the biggest things that we can do right now is compost, commercial compost. Every single municipality should have a commercial compost facility. It actually reduces so much waste, it diverts it from going into the landfill, which saves landfill space. And not only that, it gets turned into soil that anybody can go pick up. We have one here, and it's open to the public. We can go get that compost, and all those compostable packaging, you know, for food waste, those go in there, and then it becomes part of that circular system that we talked about. So we need to use our voices. This is what we need to see change, and it'll do your community good.
And Bonnie, can I add one point there? I think most people, you know, thought this was all about litter and keeping debris and all that and keeping our cities clean. I think if your local elected officials understand that you care about this issue because you care about what it means to our health and well-being, and that it is, you know, it's creating such bad across all aspects of our lives. If you can get that across and let them know that you're aware of that and you want to make sure they're aware of that, I think it just elevates the awareness, the psyche of this issue as all of us look for solutions. So I think it has such a psychological effect once they understand that it's really a pervasive problem and it's more than just litter.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, you know, I was just speaking with a gentleman that works for the plastics industry, and he said, we're not changing anything until you make us. So he was even encouraging me to get on the politicians to force them. And this is why I said this, Nick. He says, you know, we have to answer to our shareholders. So we're not going to do something that's going to cost us a little more money because our shareholders aren't going to like that. But if the government says, you know, you can no longer put these chemicals in your plastics, then they can go to their shareholders and say, sorry, it's not us. The government's making us do this. So he said, make us change, because that's where they need to hear from us to make those changes happen. I thought that was really great information for someone like me.
And it's so important to be educated on these elements and you know, to follow up. We'll share some excellent resources on Instagram pages that you can follow that give you some tips and tricks and whatnot. So we'll share those with our audience members. So I think keeping informed, educated, and spreading the word is really important. Once you learn something, I mean, I learned so much today, and definitely, especially on all the health hazards that plastics cause, and you don't even realize, you know, what you're putting into your body. So thank you to both of you. And especially thank you to Lenka as well on her incredible project. I hope to see that in fruition in the future. So now at this juncture, we have an opportunity to ask questions of our 3 panelist members, and I would love to present to you Tanya Pulvar. She is the treasurer of the Slovak-American Cultural Center, and she will be moderating the question and answer session. Over to you, Tanya.
Good evening. We have so many interesting questions tonight, so I'd like to get right to it. Perhaps we could start with Bonnie. I think Nick mentioned during the discussion earlier that 50% of the plastics that are used, that are produced each year are for single-use purposes, used once and then end up in a landfill or in the ocean. And we have a question from an audience member as to what kind of alternatives are there and what kind of progress has been made to develop feasible alternatives, in particular to these single-use plastics?
It's been a little slow going, but you can see the cardboard one as I gave an example. And Nick, your restaurant, you're doing some really great work on not using plastic. So it's still single use, it's just not plastic, right? So maybe you could address that. And what I'll tell you that I'm working on is hemp. So hemp was actually the first thing that the American dollars were made out of, right? So this was a product we used to grow in the States. And it's something that can turn into something like 50,000 different materials. And you can, yes, even make hemp plastic. So we're trying to make hemp plastic and then look to see how long it takes it to break down. So is it actually a better alternative? But there are plenty of other like bamboo materials that people are using, bamboo straws, bamboo toothbrushes. I just happen to have mine right here. So yeah, you do have to look, but there are people that are coming up with alternative materials. You just have to, when you're in the store, look and see. If it's a choice between buying macaroni out of a little plastic bag or in a cardboard box, probably the cardboard box is the better option. So there's little things that we can do that's already on the shelves, and then there are things coming up. So Nick, talk about what you do in the restaurant level. And
two pieces to this still. Before I do that, Tanya, the number was 2 years ago was 55%. So 55% of all what we see out there is coming from single-use plastics. That's why if we could just attack that one, right? If we could attack that one, we more than half the problem. We take half the problem off the table. And it is primarily all about bottled water and bottles used for detergents and all the things in our home that we're, as consumers, taking use of. So if we just change that behavior to, glasses, and we bring our own bottles, as you guys already discussed, in your home, not using shampoos that are in plastic bottles, using shampoos that are made from manufacturers that come in a single device that you actually just put in it, add water, and you just reuse the containers. And so there's so many of that exist in the providers today of solutions that I think you just got to look around you. You'll find them. They're available. In our restaurant, we actually looked. Bonnie made us really pay attention to everything. It's not just that there's no plastic glasses or plastic silverware or utensils, but she also got to the toothpicks we use and the plastic wrappers around that. And we don't need that anymore, right? You got to understand the trade-offs you're making. And so we've done that. To the takeaway, we do a lot of people come in and take out a lot of food. And we've moved to now containers that are biodegradable. And now we're moving to ones that are going to be produced from hemp. It costs a little bit more, but we've actually made it clear to our customers that we think this is important enough that we're taking that on, and we're happy to do it.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you, from your own experience in the restaurant industry, obviously that's a huge producer of plastic waste. What you can share with us to help us, is it really possible as a household, as a business, to dramatically reduce our use of plastic? Is it possible? Because when I go to the supermarket, like that photo that you showed from the beginning, it's overwhelming. Everything, it seems like almost everything is packaged in plastic.
It totally is. And you're right, Tanya. You know, so we first had to spend the time with our own employees and explain to them what was going on around them, because like all of us, we all are amazed when we learn how big the problem is. That's number one. Secondly, it's because patrons who come are at times they're saying, where's my straw? Why isn't a straw in my drink? I'm paying money for this. Why, you know, and we try to say to them, we'll give you a stirrer, but we're plastic free. And you got to take that from a defensive to an offensive, kind of saying why we're proud of it. That made the difference for us, because we did have a lot early on where people were a little perturbed as to, you know, are you guys cheap? Why are you doing this? You know, because in retail, 10 cents more for a take-home dish is a big deal when you're doing thousands of those, right? And we're talking about lower margin, profit margins in this industry in general. So it's got to lead to patronage as a result of people appreciating why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that inspiration. And we know that it can be done. And I guess we each have to actually take the energy and the effort to do that in our own households and examine all the purchases we make. I have yet, maybe we can talk afterwards, I've never found a shampoo that is not packaged in plastic. So I didn't know it existed, and maybe we can share that with our viewers.
We can share that. Actually, we can send you a list of manufacturers that actually do that in multiple forms. It's
yep. Plain
Wonderful.
Products is one. Plain Products, they send you an aluminum can, and then when you're done with it, they give you the box, you ship it back to them, they refill. So there's no waste at all. It's so great. And it's all like, you could literally eat it. There are no harmful chemicals in it, and it smells amazing.
Fantastic. We have a question for Lenka. Lenka, if you could just speak a little bit about the competition that you entered. How many entrants were there to this competition for which you won the 2020 Grand Prix Award for Architecture and Innovation of the Sea? And did they share with you why the Eighth Continent won this award, and also what inspired your design versus the many other typical designs?
Thank you very much for the question. So this was the 10th year of the competition, and during the last year, it was around 10,000 projects those entered. This year, it was 1,694 participants. Those signed their projects into the competition in 3 different categories. And considering what the jury said and what Mr. Jury said about the project, the part that really captured the attention of the jury was that it wasn't only, looking at the architecture as at the shell, because sometimes for these really fast competitions, there isn't even the time to really go much farther. So they really appreciated that the project was not only looking at, the way how to physically remove the plastic, but it was looking at the 3 main topics of my project. Those were, on one hand, the cleaning of the ocean. On the other hand, it was the creation of the interdisciplinary platform and creation of the educational platform for people to find out more about the ocean, having the possibility to research really on spot. And the third topic that I was developing was the way how to create a self-sustainable object on the sea. And this complexity captured the jury, and they gave me the award. And for the inspiration, there was the other part of your question. So I always look for inspiration into the nature. I believe the nature is really the best teacher we have here. It really found solutions for every possible thing, and much smarter many times that we could really build up till now. And I'm really fascinated by the bodies that the nature is creating. If we look at the animals or we look at the plants, because their bodies have always the logic to answer to their surrounding, to the environment, and they're always able to react. And this is still a little bit missing in our designs, and we are still making the designs very static. And I hope that by the time we will be able to develop much more smart materials and designs, those would be closer to the way how the nature is designing.
Lenka, what are the next steps? What are you planning for this design? And have you been approached by anyone with any next steps, or what are you planning to do? And how do we get it from its current state to getting it executed?
There has to be still a more development into the project. This is still a concept. It was as well a concept competition. And, you know, as any architecture piece, you have many different stages from the concept stage to it's being built on the site. And so there has to be still a lot of studies for the technology, for, you know, for the way how it really can sustain the water environment and the difficulty of the water as well. And I'm really eager to take this project on and take it further. And there are many people that really answered to this project and are showing me their support. And hopefully by the time they're going to be as well some investor or a group of investors that we can take this on and start developing the technology and, you know, get it there, get it on the ocean and start cleaning.
Wonderful. So how many years have you been already working on this? Like when from the very first time you thought of it until now?
It's more or less 4 years. So in general, the main part of the project was developed as my thesis project at the university. But I always believed in this project, and I believe that the problem is real, and we can't just, you know, sparkle it and then hide it somewhere in the box and not come back to it. So it was for me as well a very personal thing to follow up with the project and bring it further. So over these 4 years, I was always coming back to it and trying to a little bit, you know, review the technology, look at what is new possible in the world. And yeah, I'm keen on carrying on, and let's see where I can bring it.
Wonderful, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about recycling and education about recycling as well. So this is something, the next question is for Bonnie or Nick. There were a few statistics that were thrown out. One was the shocking statistics that 80% of plastic bottles never get recycled. So I'd love to explore a little bit why don't they get recycled? So maybe that's my first question. And my second related question is, I'm wondering what percentage of all single-use plastics get recycled in the US and in the world? I don't know if you know the answers to those questions.
Okay, so regarding the number, that statistic of bottles not being recycled, I can speak directly to that because I happen to live in a state that does not have the bottle bill. And though we have a company here that recycles bottles and turns it into carpeting, because we do not have the bottle bill, even though we generate enough bottles for this company, too many of them end up in the landfill. So people are not motivated at all to recycle for the most part in this state. And so they're either ending up in the environment or ending up in the landfill. So this company has to go to other states in order to get enough bottles. And they typically have to go to states that have the bottle bill. And you know what I mean by bottle bill, right? Where you have to pay 5 cents, 6 cents to take the bottle out of the store, and then you can redeem it. You can return the bottle and get your 6 cents back. So that's a bottle bill. And so because we don't have that in only, I think 10 states now, we used to have 11, we're not getting the return on those bottles like we should. And that's one of the things that the Break Free from Plastic Act, as well as the Blue New Deal, is working on with our federal government, to mandate the bottle bill in all 50 states, because that number will change once you can put a value on those bottles. So people don't like having to pay the nickel charge, but they do like getting their nickel back when they return the bottle. So that's one of the answers to solve that problem.
And if I could add one other point, Tanya, because this, again, Bonnie has educated so much, our whole team here, but, you know, 100% of bottles of real bottles are actually recycled, because glass is glass. It's either, you know, clear glass or green or yellow, but everyone knows how to take that and recycle it. Same thing with aluminum cans. 100% of aluminum is recycled because aluminum is aluminum. There's no such thing as every plastic's the same. Every piece of plastic has a different set of polymers and chemicals that are added to it to make it do certain things. That's what's so beautiful and what has created the huge use of plastics everywhere, but it's also created the problem. And that's why when Bonnie says that you've got to be able to sort it properly, because today it all being mixed, municipalities can't do anything with it. They try to skim and try to take bottles if they can, but so much of it is just not usable. And it's so much easier to just take it all, crush it, and ship it off seas. And that's the problem.
Yeah. And we're no longer doing that. Like this is, in fact, Nick, you brought this to my attention, like more and more countries are not taking our recyclables anymore. And we don't have the infrastructure in our country anymore to handle it. So therefore it's not getting recycled. A lot of, even though we put it in the right place, it's getting thrown away because we don't have a use for it right yet. And so we've got to rebuild that infrastructure.
Nick, as a business person, let me ask the question, what does it take to bring those recycling centers to the United States?
You know, it's one that I have a lot of hope on, what the project Bonnie was talking about, the plastics to fuel. Because think about it, Tanya, if we could have small micro reactors, right, in every municipality where you can where all your plastics are going to originally anyway, they're being carted there, the municipality's paying for that. You know, as Bonnie's describing it, these reactors can turn that plastic right back to diesel fuel. They could turn it into kerosene, naphtha. A municipality can take that and turn it into a profit center, right? Most of these reactors pay back in less than a year and a half, 2 years. In a couple of years, those prices will even come down further. So I'm really hopeful that if we could put some more money behind R&D, can get the right work that Bonnie's team has started to ensure that there are no other toxins being created through that process, which I think is where there's been a lot of hesitation. People thought that's not a clean process. But if it is, could you imagine we don't have to move this stuff all around the world or put it in landfills? You just take it, your municipalities gathering it today, they can take that, turn it to kerosene, use it for all their vehicles today that they need it for, or diesel fuel. And it just becomes a profit center. Boy, I don't think that's too far away from us, Tanya. I think there's a couple of hurdles that have to be worked through, and it starts with the science, but I think the economics are right behind it. And we can get rid of so much of this right at the source.
Right. So
fascinating. Yeah.
Recycled, and then the rest of the stuff that can't get recycled gets turned into energy. And, you know, those trucks are being filled up with fossil fuels every day going out to collect our trash. Wouldn't it be nice if they were picking up the trash that actually turned in the fuel that got them to go pick up our trash? I mean, it would be this circular economy like we have been talking about.
Indeed. And I think the education we're getting on this call, we can all go away from this and think about how to engage both at the municipal level, which is very, very important and something that we can all do, as well as at the state or the federal level. We're getting a lot of questions for Lenka also. So I want to turn to Lenka. Sure. The strikingly beautiful design of your facility is something that I think it's very inspiring, and we can all see how beautiful it is. You've told me that Zaha Hadid was a pioneering figure in architecture of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, and that she has been a big influence on you. So could you share with us her influence on you, how she's inspired you, and how we can see her influence in eighth continent facility.
Of course. Yeah, so I was following her work for a very long time. And I had a few opportunities to meet her at the university in Vienna where she was teaching. Sadly, I wasn't really her student because I was in another studio. But just to be, you know, in her proximity and see the criticism she was giving to another students was really life-changing for all of us. She was really a leader in architecture, and she was a visionary. And at the same time, she was really practical, and she was really always interested in the technology and how things gonna become a reality, and how the end user is, you know, enjoying the space. So her you know, kind of interest in always looking for the new borders, and not even borders, to look for the limits. Those can be always broken, and to look always for something new. And you know, some of my colleagues, they said that she was always trying to discover America every day. So she was always trying to discover something new, and she was bored if you know, someone would bring to the table something that was already seen. And this will and interest as well is something what I was looking for, and why she was so inspiring for me. And as well, working at her studio in London, although I joined after she sadly passed. It's an amazing place to be in because of the discussions we have about the design, because of the new technologies those we use in architecture, and you know, the discussions with many engineers and technicians and people those understand as well the other aspects of architecture that has to be implemented in the design. And this is what is inspiring my work as well while working, you know, for the studio, or as well while developing the 8th continent. And I think it's really important for each architect to look at architecture from the visionary point of view, because the buildings are not going to be built tomorrow. They're going to be built in, you know, 5-10 years, a few of them, or many of them actually, because it takes a long time. And we always have to look for something that can, you know, stay on the top for much longer, and something that can integrate the newest technology, the newest material, and be here for generations.
So your idea, which won the competition, has anything similar been proposed before that you know of, in terms of the completeness and the technology, or was this inspired by the Zaha Hadid philosophy of going way beyond anything that's been sort of dreamt of before?
There are many projects that are, you know, focused on cleaning the ocean, and I really value each of them. And when I started to develop this project, and then as well during the years, I was always looking at them for you know, inspiration, or to know what is out there, because the research is as well a very important part of architects' life, and each of us life, so we know what is happening around us. And so there are definitely projects those, you know, gather the plastic from the ocean, but I don't know about any that would be, you know, complete in the way how mine is, that it would be creating the platform for scientists and researchers, and it would be creating a self-sufficient object on the water that can as well support the community that is actually taking care of the cleaning station. Yeah, as I said, Zaha was always for me inspiration, but for this work it wasn't only Zaha. Hani Rashid, who was my studio leader, he is as well an architect that is enormously interested into technology, and he's a visionary and into the possibilities how we can change the world and how technology and architecture can create together something better for the society. So they both, and as well and many more were a really inspiration for me in creating this project, and I'm really glad that I had the possibility to meet them in my life.
It seems like this competition also had the effect of not only inspiring the development of many designs, but raising awareness for this issue as well. Do you recommend that? It seems like it's a good idea to have a competition if you want to raise awareness, right?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing competition. And, as I said, this was the 10th year, and I was always looking up at the laureates of this competition and at the beautiful projects they designed. And you always find out a lot about as well what people see as the problem, because the competition is just a general topic, and each of the people have to, pick up and make their own brief, so pick up their own question that they want to answer. And I think these competitions are a very valuable part for the students, for the young professionals, but as well for the general public to see what as well people see as the problems around them in the environment, and how they want to solve it. And there are concept competitions, but no one is saying that they cannot get farther, they cannot become a reality. And I hope there are going to be many of those. There's going to really be able to once be a real buildings on the sea, or in as well our coast, and that they could help the environment, because that is the most important. And it's very important to raise awareness and learn a bit every day, and see how we can change, how Bonnie and Nick were saying, there are so many things that we can do in everyday life. And maybe sometimes we need a design like what I created that is something bigger and somehow captures your attention, but at the end of the day, the change has to come from the smallest things we can do every day. And it's very important to start there. And just to somehow conclude, someone told me that the design I created is really good because I created something beautiful for a problem that it's so ugly that no one wants to talk about it. And if I just helped with this design, that it opened up the gate for people to talk about the ugliness of the garbage and pollution. I'm very happy, because we shouldn't be just not talking about pollution because we don't like the image of it. We should talk about the problems and discuss them and find together how to solve them.
That's incredibly inspiring, creating something beautiful to address a problem that's really ugly, because I think all people have the desire to create beauty. It's born in all of us. And so with that, I think this is the last question for Bonnie and Nick, a little bit related. How do we improve the educational process, both for plastics, for pollution, for the waste we're creating, as well as for improving recycling? What are the top two things we can do in our country to improve the educational process?
I think this goes in so many ways. I do believe millennials are so much more connected to this. I think they do get this and are leading more than I think the rest of the population is. But I do, for my family as an example, just once you started scratching at this and learning and getting yourself exposed to it, the more you realize you want to do something about it, the more you realize that it's easy to start changing aspects of your daily behavior. And so I would just tell you, I think you just got to be a megaphone for, getting as many people as to just understand that this problem's there and just at getting constant awareness to it. I think the more it's in front of people's faces, the more they're going to start to realize that there are things that have to change. So be a megaphone for the problem. I think all of us can do that. It's not hard. And you don't have to be super smart about the problems because it's so evident every day once you see what's happening with it. So that's my answer to this. I think we just got to get as many people up and taking arms around this issue.
Right, and I will make two comments. One, what we rely on is DIY, so do it yourself. You know, a lot of us have been doing these do it yourself projects, and there are so many things that you can do. You do not have to buy toothpaste. You can make your own. And the formula that I use when I went to my dentist, he said, I don't know what you're doing differently, but your teeth look amazing. And it was because I wasn't using the standard toothpaste. You can do that with deodorant, with detergent. So my daughter, I don't make the detergent, but she does. And when she makes it, it lasts for about 3 months. So it's just using a couple of ingredients. Instead of buying a big jug with a formula in there, you make your own and you don't have to have the big jug. And it's absolutely beautiful, using essential oils to make it smell nice. So there's things that you can do, going back to the way things were done before, right? I mean, our parents used to make a lot of this stuff, and we just got really comfortable with buying anything that's packaged. So there are ways that we can work around those day-to-day items. And then I would encourage all of you to find a local nonprofit and get involved. They do regular cleanups. They have educational programs. Most of them have like a Saturday where they have a guest speaker. And now it's much easier because we can do what we're doing tonight, right? But really reach out to people in your community that share this passion, because they're there. They're right. There might be your next door neighbor and you don't even know it. But you really just have to step outside your comfort zone, find the people that are doing this type of work in your neighborhood. And a lot of them are working on petitions. They're already engaged, and you can just step right in and be a part of it. And trust me, you're going to feel really good about it.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's really inspiring. I mean, I'm inspired to actually go out and get more involved in my community because it's a community challenge, but it also feels really good, I think, to get involved, you know, both to have the knowledge and to solve the problem together. So that's something we've probably gotten away from as well,
right.
Especially during this pandemic. So it's time to get back out there and engage with everyone.
That's right. Meet some new people. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great time to be alive. Remember that. It's a great time to
Yes.
be alive. And I truly believe that.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sabina, who I think has some surprises and concluding remarks to share with us.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you to our panelists. Really, we learned so much this evening, and I think it's so fascinating that we have people from different fields of professional expertise addressing this issue from their different perspectives. So I think that brought so much wealth to the discussion, and really appreciate all of you taking the time to chat with our audience and to share your knowledge. I think one of the biggest things that we can do that we heard from today is to bring awareness to the issue and also make a small impact by the changes that we decide to do in our own households and within our own families. So I encourage you to share this presentation. There'll be a recorded version. Go ahead and visit Lenka's website, share her beautiful concept project, and get people talking about it, and go to Plastic Oceans Project and take a look at what they're doing. And then all of the excellent resources that Nick shared, we posted them on Slido, Instagram pages that you can follow to learn more. So bring awareness. That's the big thing that you can also do. I do want to take this opportunity to just give you guys a little surprise. At the end of each of our webinars, we pick a winner. Tonight we'll have Ron and Bonnie will share with us the amazing prize that you will receive, care package courtesy of Plastic Oceans Project.
And I'll just share a little sample. So this is it's a paper bag, but it's made so sturdy that you can wash it. And the more you wash it, the more it looks leathery. It has just a cloth handle on it, and it's all stitched, so there's no glues. And it's beautiful. It's a really good looking bag to be walking down the street with. And we'll also throw in the only solo cup you'll ever need. So it's a metal cup that looks exactly like the same shape as a solo cup. You take it to every party and event, and you will be a hit because you're gonna have this really cool cup, and you can educate other people that no, you don't have to use a solo cup. There are better choices out there.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Bonnie. And then we, as a board for the Slovak-American Cultural Center, I'll ask Peter to share. We've put together just some thoughts on how we can make a difference. And there's so many great things that you can do on an individual basis. So with that, I'd like to thank our incredible panelists, Lenka, Bonnie, and Nick. Really, really appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and insight this evening and your vision for cleaner oceans. I want to thank my co-moderator, Tanya Pulvar, and from behind the scenes, a big thank you to Peter Krajniak and the entire SACC team. We want to thank Slido, which is an excellent platform which we use tonight to allow hundreds of viewers to attend and participate in this virtual webinar. I encourage you to go to our website, Slovak-Americancc.org, to check out our 2021 webinar series. We'll also post all of the resources from tonight's webinar, including all of the links to our panelists' web pages, so you can do further research and also share all of this amazing information. And with that, I want to thank all of you for joining tonight. We did go over our anticipated time, but the discussion was so amazing and fruitful. Thank you to each of you for all of the wonderful questions that you posed to our panelists and for joining us tonight. We'll see you on March 30th at 6 p.m. We'll be looking at Slovak Easter traditions, so we hope that you will be able to join us. Once again, thank you for being with us this evening.